In this video, we're going to talk about rounding. And before we get into the directions on how to round, I want to go over all of the different place values, because when you're asked to round a number, usually you're asked to round to a certain place value, like round this number to the hundredth place, for example. Occasionally, you'll be asked to round to decimal places, so maybe instead of hundredth place, 2 decimal places. That's a little simpler because you can just count, but we want to make sure we know the names of all the place values just in case, since that's usually more common anyway. So let's start and let's look at this chart. So this chart goes from 10 millions all the way to 10,000s. The place values go on forever in either direction. These are just the ones that I happen to put on this chart because, we can't go on forever. So we had to pick the most common ones. So I'm going to make up a number, and I am just making up digits here just so we can have a number to talk about, a little bit of context as we go through the different place values. So this number is 47,467,514 and 4,397 10,000ths. All of the digits to the right are all less than 1. So, and then all of the place values to the left of the decimal are going to be 1 or greater. So let's start with the 10 millions place value, and then we'll go from there. So then the 7 is the millions, 4 is hundred thousands, and then the 6 is 10,000s. Thousands place, hundreds, tens, then we have ones, we have the tenths place, hundredths place, thousands place, and then the 10,000s place. And notice that all of these end in THS, which is helpful, just to help you remember that they're to the right of the decimal. And so how do we round? So let's say, for example, that I asked you to round to this number to the hundredth place. So the first thing is we locate our digit to be rounded. So I'm going to locate the digit. I asked you to round to the nearest hundredth place, so I locate that place value, which is where the 3 is. And then step 2 is I look at the digit to the right of that. So I look to the right and it's a 9. And then I'm going to do one of two things. So if that digit to the right is a 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4, then I leave the place value digit alone. So if it was 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4 to the right, then I would just leave that a 3. It's not, however, so if it is a 5, 6, 7, 8, or 9, which in our case it's a 9, you're going to bump up that place value digit by 1. And so instead of 3, that 3 now becomes a 4. And then step 3, put in placeholder zeros if necessary. So what does that mean? Well, everything to the left of the number you're rounding, that all stays the same. So I'm going to write all of those digits up here. I just copy those down. Those all stay the exact same. And I can put commas in between. There we go. And then the placeholder digits are going to go to the right of the place value that we rounded. So put zeros to the right of the place value digit that we were asked to round. So the 9 is going to become a 0, the 7 is going to become a 0. Now, oftentimes, as is the case in this number, if the zeros are to the right of the decimal, if they're at the very end of the number, you do not need them. You can get rid of them. It's kind of like if you think about money, for example, like if I have $153 and 0.4300, those zeros are unnecessary. I have $153.43. Not necessary to put those zeros. So you can put them in as part of just the process if you want, and then just, erase them when you're done, or just leave them off altogether. And so those are the directions. Now let's jump into a couple of examples. So rounding example 1, for money answers, unless directions state otherwise, we always round around to the nearest penny. And what that means, it's also known as the hundredth place. It's also, so I'm just going to put here, also 2 decimal places. which means 2 digits after the decimal place. So we're asked to round this number right here, so I'm just going to write it out. So 156.3566. And so since this is money and we're asked to round, then we're going to locate the digit to be rounded to. So that's always the hundredths place, which is right here, or 2 decimal places, 1, 2 digits after the decimal. And then we're going to follow our steps. So we're going to look to the digit to the right of the digit that needs to be rounded. This is a 6, so since it is 5 or greater, so that's that option number 2 we talked about earlier, we bump that 5 up to a 6. So this number is going to become $156 and 0.3. Remember, everything to the left just stays the same. You just copy that down. And then this 5 is going to become a 6, and then the rest of them become zeros. And again, like I was just saying, these zeros are unnecessary. So for our final answer, I would just write $156.36, and that's your final answer. This next one, so we're going to round this number to the nearest hundred place. So keep in mind there's not a THS in the end. So hundredths would be where this 5 is. Hundreds place, we're looking to the left of the decimal place. So we're going to count, there's the ones place, the tens place, and the hundreds place. So the hundreds is where the 5 is. Then we look to the right of the 5, which is a 3. Since it's a 3, that tells us to leave the 5 alone. So I leave the 5 alone, and then we have nothing to the left, so I don't worry about that. But then everything to the right becomes 0. So I write it 0 in place of the 3, the 8 becomes a 0, and all 4 of those numbers to the right of the decimal become a 0. And then, just like we had talked about before, any 0 to the right of the decimal place, like at the end of the number, is unnecessary. So we could just write 500 for our final answer. And then for C, so we're rounding the same number to the nearest hundredths place. So I'm going to start at the decimal. I always like to count tenths place, hundredths place. It helps me figure out the place value. So we're looking at this where this 2 is. I look to the right of the 2, and that's a 3. Because it's a 3, it tells me to leave that 2 alone. So I write down the whole number to the left of the 2, so 538.92, and then these last 2 digits, they just go away. You can write zeros or just erase them or just not write them down. It's up to you. And 538.92 is going to be our final answer. Okay, so last one. So now we're going to round this decimal to 2 decimal places. So this is a good example to do because we have some practice being asked in a different way. So 2 decimal places means we're going to look at the second number. So we're going to count past the decimal place, 1, 2, and we're going to underline that second 2. That's the place value we're looking at. We look to the right of it, and it's a 9. So the 9 tells us to bump that 2 up to a 3. So I write 124.23, and then those last 2 digits, those just go away. They become zeros and go away. So our answer is 124.23.